Imagine an island that's isolated from the outside world, unaffected by time, and highly guarded by its people. It's hard to think a place like this can exist at present when the world is so interconnected. Nobody from outside has ever entered this area without suffering fatal consequences. Ancient warriors, unbreakable customs, and a life preserved in time are all part of the story that follows. North Sentinel Island is probably the worst place on Earth. Thus, this is not fiction. In today's video, we will talk about the Sentinelese, who are the indigenous group that has guarded its territory with unparalleled ferocity for generations. They live in North Sentinel, which is situated in the Andaman Sea. The main question that arises in everyone's mind after hearing this is, why do the Sentinelese defend their island so relentlessly? Why is contact prohibited? And how have they succeeded to hold the modern world at bay? To find the answer to these questions, in this video, we'll travel through mystery, drama, and an understanding of a way of life that has persisted for thousands of years. We will now explore the realm of North Sentinel Island, where time has stopped and every attempt is greeted with deadly opposition. North Sentinel Island. The Andaman Islands, a secluded group of islands in the Indian Ocean, include North Sentinel Island. It's one of the most remote locations on Earth, with a total area of only roughly 23 square miles. The Sentinelese have inhabited the isolated region for more than 60,000 years, miraculously unaffected by modern society. The Sentinelese live a lifestyle that's not changed much since the Stone Age, since they have no access to power, technology, or present-day medical care. They're among the planet's last surviving pre-Neolithic societies due to their distant location and firm independence. The Sentinelese defend their island with relentless hostility in order to preserve their autonomy. They react with brutal ferocity, viewing any approach as a threat. Armed with bows, arrows, and spears, they've shot arrows at low-flying aircraft and turned away everything from helicopters to fishing boats. They've made one thing very clear: outsiders are not welcome here, and this is the plain message. However, this dislike is more than just violence. It's a survival tactic that's been refined over many generations to defend their way of life against external dangers. They view any approach to reach their settlement as a threat, and they react accordingly. North Sentinel's been classified off-limits by the Indian government, which is in charge of the Andaman Islands. To avoid unintentional interaction, the island's surrounded by a 3-mile exclusion zone. The Sentinelese view any stranger as a possible threat to their existence, and their hostility is a centuries-old defensive strategy. Hearing this makes one wonder why an island continues to be so strongly secluded, and how did it get such a deadly reputation? Initial encounters. There's a lot of confusion about North Sentinel Island's past. In 1880, British naval commander Maurice Vidal Portman conducted a mission to the island, marking the first known contact with the Sentinelese. Although Portman wanted to learn about the indigenous people, his method was anything but polite. He brought 6 Sentinelese, including children, to Port Blair, the Andaman Islands capital. Sadly, the adults quickly became ill and passed away, most likely from illnesses to which they lacked antibodies. The Sentinelese were taught a severe lesson about the dangers that strangers could bring, but Portman, seeing the damage, allowed the children to return to the island. One cannot blame them for being so defensive after hearing this story. A fear of foreign interactions might have been reinforced by this initial experience with outsiders. Since the Sentinelese are not immune to modern illnesses, even a little sickness could have disastrous consequences for their remote community. Their rejection of the outside world has allowed them to thrive for millennia, and this initial experience probably strengthened their decision to remain hidden. The Sentinelese grew even more aggressive following Portman's failed experiment, seeing any attempt as a danger to their survival. However, the encounter in 1880 was not just one contact effort. A few others attempted to contact North Sentinel over the years, either out of interest or with their goal of civilizing the island's residents, or just out of mere curiosity. But each attempt was greeted with violence, and the island soon gained an image as a hostile and dangerous place. The 2006 incident. In 2006, one of the most famous modern-day encounters with the Sentinelese took place. Near North Sentinel Island, two fishermen named Sundar Raj and Pandit Tiwari were engaging in illegal fishing. The men made the decision to test their chances on the island seas in spite of the well-known risks and cautions. Their boat drifted dangerously near the island while they were sleeping, into Sentinelese territory that was off-limits. And for a very good reason. Sentinelese warriors surrounded the fishermen when they woke up as daylight came. The two men were quickly killed, and their bodies were later found on the shore. A barrage of arrows from the Sentinelese forced the Indian Coast Guard to abandon the recovery effort when they tried to recover the dead. The entire world was stunned by the occurrence, which also served as an example of the lethal reputation of North Sentinel Island. The fishermen were considered invaders by the Sentinelese, and they were quickly sent a warning to anyone who attempted to transgress. This terrible incident highlighted the necessity for strict laws and rekindled the discussion about the risks posed by uncontacted tribes. In response, the Indian government tightened the exclusion zone surrounding North Sentinel, highlighting the potential danger of any contact for both parties. This incident opened a new chapter in the hostile history of the island. Expeditions for anthropology research. Many times, people attempted to make connections with the Sentinelese in an effort to learn more about their culture, despite the island's well-known harsh reputation. Under the direction of the Indian government, anthropologist T.N. Bandit undertook a number of excursions to North Sentinel in the 1970s. Although he was aware of the dangers, Pandit wanted to build a friendly connection with the tribe. His strategy was careful, depending more on gift-giving than on invasion. Gifts like coconuts, bananas, and even pigs would be left on the beach when Pandit and his group approached the island in small boats. The Sentinelese continued to be cautious for years, either reacting angrily or observing from the edge of the forest. In an effort to learn more about the tribe's culture, Pandit's team watched from a distance, recording each response. Finally, in 1991, an unforeseen event occurred. The Sentinelese went to the beach and politely took the presents that Pandit's crew had brought with them. It was an achievement, an uncommon instance of friendly communication. This fragile relationship was not to last long, though. During their next journey, the Sentinelese reverted to their customary defensive posture, turning down the presents and indicating that the outsiders should depart. The intricacy of the Sentinelese people can be seen by Pandit's experiences. Their bitterness is a defensive strategy that's been developed over many generations to safeguard their culture and well-being. It's not just blind anger in an attempt to scare everyone. Isolation serves as a survival tactic for the Sentinelese, protecting their environment from outside forces that can bring illness, exploitation, and cultural deterioration. John Chau's tragic story. The dreadful reputation of North Sentinel Island was brought to the world's attention once more in 2018. American missionary John Chau made the decision to go to the island in order to convert the Sentinelese to Christianity. Despite the clear risks and rigid rules that forbade interaction, Chau felt he had been assigned to spread Christianity among the tribe, and his mission was very personal. Chau studied the Andaman Islands and even trained to avoid prevalent illnesses that could affect the Sentinelese as part of his thorough preparation for his expedition. With a Bible in hand, he sailed toward the coast in a kayak after hiring local fishermen to carry him near North Sentinel. Upon his initial approach, he encountered resistance. Sentinelese fighters brandishing bows and arrows welcomed him. Chau withdrew but came back the following day, resolved to make contact. Unfortunately, his dedication would prove to be his downfall. Like earlier invaders, he was killed by the Sentinelese and his body was buried on the shore. An international discussion on the morality of missionary activity, the dangers of approaching untouched tribes, and the necessity of respecting the Sentinelese's autonomy was ignited by Chau's passing. The laws of isolation and ethics. Important conversations about moral dilemmas are brought up by the Sentinelese's rivalry. It makes one wonder if we should even try to approach uncontacted tribes. Even if that implies never knowing about their culture, should we support their decision to stay alone? The solution is obvious to the Indian administration. To protect North Sentinel Island, India has put in place strict rules under the Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Act. The 3-mile isolation zone is strictly maintained, and anyone who breaks it risks harsh punishment. The Sentinelese way of life is intended to be preserved in addition to protecting visitors. The way the world views uncontacted tribes has changed, and this policy reflects that change. Contact was once frequently viewed as a noble activity that would civilize indigenous people. This was a very Eurocentric approach, and the world has started to recognize that it was problematic. However, a new strategy has emerged as a result of the terrible consequences of interaction, including exploitation, sickness, and cultural devastation. Nowadays, most governments and anthropologists concur that uncontacted tribes should be left alone in order to protect their independence and well-being. North Sentinel Island has come to represent this strategy and serves as an example of how crucial it is to uphold the rights and autonomy of indigenous people. The risks of forced contact are highlighted by India's regulations, which are among the harshest in the world. However, the ethical discussion is still ongoing. Some believe that slow engagement could help shield the Sentinelese from potential threats and that contact is unavoidable. This might be somewhat true in a completely globalized world. Others maintain that the tribe should be allowed to make its own decisions without outside influence. The Indian administration is still certain that the Sentinelese must be left in freedom and that North Sentinel Island is off limits. North Sentinel Island's mysteries. The mystery surrounding North Sentinel Island's residents is among its most fascinating characteristics. The Sentinelese continue to be a total mystery, in contrast to other tribes that have slowly opened up to the rest of the world. Nobody's familiar with their language, their traditions, or even the breadth of their knowledge and abilities. The little that we do know is based on occasional sightings during those close interactions and distant observations. We cannot solely rely on this because the nature of these sightings are too hostile. It has been uncovered by the little information we have on them that the Sentinelese are hunter-gatherers who depend on hunting, fishing, and gathering. They make their tools by using stone, bone, and wood, which are basically materials that have been useful to them for thousands of years. Their semi-nomadic existence, which permits them to relocate as needed, is demonstrated by the small, transient shelters they make out of bamboo and palm leaves. However, the island's shallow reefs and thick forests serve as a fortress that shields the tribe from the outside world, making them more than simply resources. Living on Sentinel Island offers a window into human history and serves as a reminder of a time when the capacity to protect one's territory and have a thorough understanding of the land were essential for life. Every square kilometer of their island, every food and water source, and every possible threat is probably known to the Sentinelese. Their ability to adapt, persevere, and be skilled is what allowed them to survive. Additionally, the Sentinelese are particularly at risk. Their health could be severely impacted by even a common cold if they're not exposed to current illnesses. Because of this vulnerability, the island is much more hostile because any stranger could be carrying harmful viruses. Isolation is a necessity for the Sentinelese, not just a mere decision they made for themselves.